My dog sat on my glasses, so if they fly off, that's the reason. I wanted to make a short little video talking about a concept I've been thinking about. So essentially in Viking mythology, they thought about the world in concentric circles, not necessarily up-down as we do. And in the inner circles were order and gods you can talk to and request. And in the outer circles there are mythical wild beasts that are fearsome, can eat you, are not really predisposed to talking to you or granting you your wishes. And it's frigid, it's cold, and this makes perfect sense for a society that emerged surrounded by the Arctic and the threat of really cold winters, that their hell would be cold, not hot. And I've been thinking about this in comparison to our modern day cosmology, and something very interesting has happened in the sense that now that we find order at the edges of our society, and we find that howling chaos at the center. And it's such an interesting switch of how we look at things. And we are predisposed, everything in our language, if you're speaking English or Proto-Indo-European languages, we are predisposed to pay a lot of attention to direction. And even our language around sin, to miss the mark, to miss the target, that you're not quite going in the right direction. So direction is so important in our societies, in our languages, because if you were a nomadic wandering people, if you're a seafaring people, if you're adventurous, direction means everything. And it's a lot easier to approach the world if you look at your village as like this place of order where, animals are brought from the outside and, they're, rendered into food, order, there's warmth, there's agreed societal structure at the center. It makes a lot more sense, and it gives you a direction in that you can return home to. But now, increasingly, we're looking at it that it's more that further out from the heart of society, the more orderly and peaceful things become. You see this in a very practical sense in like the uptake of people going hiking on the weekend, people returning to forests and mountains on their off time to try to gain a sense of order. We find it in ecology, where increasingly people are returning away from the chaos and confusion and danger which exists within ordered religions, back to the peripheral, nature-based ways of looking at the world. So now our direction is away from the center of society. It's also very interesting that a lot of the discourse over the past 10 or 20 years in traditional media and non-traditional media, it focuses on other because we are tribal creatures. Like the creature hasn't changed, the method of communication may have changed, but the animal is the same. And in that discourse of other, that's how we build tribes. We define ourselves by what we are not. And if you look at this sort of stuff of people defining those who are a threat as being peripheral, that they are out there, they're far away, that they serve a threat. And, these groups of people can change. We can be at war with Oceania, one day, and not they can be our best friends the next day. You will notice this narrative shifts. But an interesting thing happens if you dare to unplug yourself a little bit from this centralized, structure of chaos, and you tend to go out towards the periphery, is that you find kindness in the people who are at the periphery of society, people who you have been told are other, are, don't align with your values, don't look like you. Instead, you find commonality. You find artists, you find people who are choosing to live a different way. You find people who are growing their own food, people who, in one way or another, have found themselves at a periphery and have maintained some sort of sanity. And we find this even with people. There's a very interesting thing that happens within our society, that there's almost a trick within it of people who are at the very heart of this howling chaos at the center tend to believe themselves to be guardians of order. But when you step outside that and you realize the peace that is within nature that we have lost, you realize that that loudness of capitalism is not natural, it's not peaceful, and it's not conducive to order. And for one way or another, we tend to seek order, and we now find order in what was previously chaos for previous generations. Now, capitalism and the endless extraction has tamed nature in a lot of places, where often when you go hiking in Europe, for instance, or Western Europe, you're not going to find wolves and bears. They're all gone. We've altered nature, and that may be a reason why it seems kinder. But it's so interesting to look at this switch. And you will often find that should you try to develop yourself in this endless game of self-development, within the center of this, you will find that the art you produce, the businesses you build, the books you write, they contain this kind of hollowness, and you will find it within yourself as well. It is self-digesting, and it pulls everything in towards it. And the ever-expanding wings of this chaos in the center is threatening to pull this natural world, all that is good and ordered and right, into this howling center. But it will collapse, and we're seeing people pull away from it. The internet is a very interesting emanation, but you see it increasingly, this pattern increasingly within the internet itself, where now the big five social media platforms are so overwhelming with this howling chaos that a lot of people simply can't engage with them anymore. The only content on these platforms is how to win on these platforms. They no longer serve a purpose of connection. It's simply how to win, to be loudest in this howling chaos. It's very, very interesting. And the more you look at it, the more you see it. But there is such peace when you further yourself and detach a little bit in small ways, and you come to find an inner peace. And when you are on top of a mountain or you're in the middle of a field, oh, there's the owl. All is well. There is such peace to be found, and I have found, and hopefully will continue to find, that there is a kindness to yourself and to your brain and to your soul in choosing to engage with things that are familiar to us, the natural world, small units of community, spending time with people we love, natural types of exchange, and the kind of art and thoughts and, produce that comes from this quiet place is so much more valuable, because it carries within it the seeds of peace, not the seeds of chaos and destruction. Yeah, that's what I've been thinking about.